This is a fan-generated show. If you'd like to support us, please go to jamieglazov.com. Also, don't forget to subscribe to our new Rumble channel. All your support is greatly appreciated.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I'm thrilled to announce the release of my new book, Obama's True Legacy, How He Transformed America. There's a reason why Mike Huckabee calls it a ferocious and chilling read. Order it now at Amazon.com or at FrontPageMag.com. Good evening. Welcome to the Glazov Gang. With us this evening, Robert Spencer, backed by popular demand. He is the director of Jihad Watch and a Shillman Fellow at the David Horowitz Freedom Center. And his new book is Empire of God, How the Byzantines Saved Civilization. Robert, welcome to the Glazov Gang.
Good to see you, Jamie. Thank you.
We have a lot to talk about this evening, but tell us a little bit about your new book.
Empire of God is a history of the Byzantine Empire. And you might think, well, why on earth would I be interested in the history of the Byzantine Empire? There are many parallels between their experience and that of the United States. There are many things we can learn from them, both in a positive way and a negative way, as in what to do and what not to do. There are many ways in which they influenced American society, culture, our political traditions, our religious traditions, our philosophical traditions. The founding fathers were deeply influenced by their system of laws, and so on and on. And yet many people have no idea, really. I remember telling a good friend that I was writing a book about this, and he said, okay, so you're talking about Plato and Socrates? No, this is actually several thousand years later. And so that is just an indication of how most people have really no idea of this aspect of history. And yet it's a very important aspect of the history of Western civilization, which we need to recover an appreciation for now that it's so much under attack.
Thank you so much, Robert. And under attack it is. The first topic I want to discuss with you this evening, you wrote another blockbuster lead feature for Front Page Mag, as you always do. Title, First Plagiarism, Now Lying. What's happening in America's universities? You were attacked once again, Robert, by certain usual suspects. As always, the cry-bully tactic is used. They make themselves the victims. You're the perpetrator, but they're lying, and they're also slandering you. Tell us what happened here.
Yeah, this was Sahar Aziz, who is a professor at Rutgers University. And she wrote a lengthy study about Islamophobia and its effects, its supposed effects on the public perceptions of the conflict between Israel and Hamas. And of course, she's pro-Hamas. And so in the course of this, she has to have some villains, and she cast me and a few other people in the role and said about me that I actually say explicitly that my goal is to foment hatred of Muslims. Now, of course, not only have I never said that explicitly or implicitly, but that is not actually my goal. My goal is to elucidate, in my work on Islam, to elucidate the true teachings of Islam and to show how they are affecting the actions of Islamic jihadis today. That really has nothing to do with hate or love in any way, but obviously I oppose Islamic jihad and I oppose Islamic jihadis. I wish Muslims the best and hope that they will reject Islamic jihad ultimately and live in peace with other people in the world. But in any case, Sahar Aziz just lied. And so I had a lawyer write to her. She ignored a couple of letters from the lawyer. And I realized she does that because she can. She knows that Rutgers won't do anything to her. Rutgers will back her up. If it comes to a lawsuit, she knows she has all the power and I have none. On the lists from the Southern Poverty Law Center and the ADL. And so she can feel free to lie about me because they already have. And so it's kind of interesting because the people who have the real power in society are those who claim to be marginalized and the victims of racism and bigotry. And the people who are really marginalized in society are the people who are supposedly perpetrating the marginalization of those in power.
Yeah, the Islamophobia thing is very successful for them, isn't it?
Yeah.
Um,
And, there were so many lies in Sahar Aziz's paper. And another one was something that she built upon from studies that came out in the wake of 9/11. So she's citing these studies from 20 years ago as if they're current. And they were libelous to start with because, well, they were not to, no, they were not libelous in their particular statements, but they were deliberately misleading. And they're even, you can see in even how she uses them how misleading they are. She says something like, 20 Islamophobic organizations received a total of $25 million from 2003 to 2009 or something like that. And if you think about it, it sounds big. It sounds like, oh, people are raking in millions from this. But then if you stopped to do the math, which of course she's counting on nobody doing, then you're seeing that this is an amount of money divided among a number of years, and that makes it smaller. And then it's divided among a number of organizations, and that makes it smaller. And then you have to factor in the fact that the organizations that she cites are not actually Islamophobic, but are security organizations, organizations designed to help the military, organizations that are trying to affect public policy in terms of foreign policy, things like that. And you end up with a small amount being given to these organizations compared to the millions that was given every year and still is to the leftist groups that came up with these bogus studies. And so the whole thing, once again, shows that the people who are really on the outs in American society today are the people who are telling the truth about the jihad and standing up for the defense of the United States in other ways, while the people who are trying to undermine and destroy our national defenses and our national unity are the ones who have all the money and all the power.
yeah, and she's making it sound like you're the one that has all the power and she's marginalized. But like you said, if you look at it, she's the one with the popularity. The legal system will be behind her, all the praise that she gets. And Robert Spencer and other Islamophobes are completely marginalized in our media. In definitely, I mean, you couldn't even, I think, what would happen if you tried to give a talk on a campus today, Robert?
Oh, I got invited, as a matter of fact, last October to two campuses, and I was relieved, I can tell you, when it turned out that I was not able to make either one of them.
Yeah.
Because I know that if I were to show up on a campus, in the first place, I'd have to have incredibly tight security. I'd have to have security that rivaled the President of the United States
Yeah.
just to keep from getting physically attacked. And
Yeah.
if I didn't get physically attacked, I would certainly be smeared, vilified, demonized, libeled, slandered, et cetera, because that, of course, has gone on for years on campuses whenever I've spoken in the past. And then if I
Yeah.
actually got to speak, it would be filled with these savages screaming and yelling and not letting me speak, which has happened before, or getting up and walking out. At Stanford University a few years back, they got up and walked out. The whole thing was orchestrated by the school administration. And then they refused to let students who actually wanted to hear the talk come in, even though the place it was a big auditorium full of empty seats. So it's really a pointless exercise. And that's, of course, what they want. They want people to say, people who are patriots, people who are speaking out in telling the truths they don't want known. They want us to say, well, it's pointless to go speak at universities because they have a good indoctrination propaganda game going in universities and they don't want it disrupted. And so I say that reluctantly, but at the same time, I have to acknowledge reality.
And Robert, it's getting more dangerous. They're more emboldened. The numbers are higher. Like after October 7th, just what we see happening, the attacks, the demonstrations. It's interesting, even at the White House recently, you just have to wonder, what if those were anti-vaccine protesters, if those were pro-MAGA protesters, I think something would have been done. But tell us about this protest at the White House and the double standards there.
Yeah, that's a very glaring double standard because you're quite right. They were storming essentially the grounds of the White House. They were trying to get over the gates, knock down the gates. At some places, they did breach and were pushed back. And so this is what if they had been uh, people questioning the integrity of an election or rallying for Trump or something like that, then they would be insurrectionists. They would be in prison. They would be facing years of time in prison after a long stretch without trial, and so on and so on. We know this because of the whole bogus January 6th insurrection narrative, and how people are still suffering in prison because of that and being given these ridiculous sentences and so on. And yet, these were pro Hamas protesters. Nobody was arrested, and nothing is going to happen because these protesters are part of the base of the regime. The Biden regime depends on those people, and it's not going to antagonize them. That's how they got into the White House, aside from cheating, and that's how they're going to stay there. And so, if they antagonize them further, they're obviously already very angry with Biden and his regime, or they wouldn't have been storming the White House. But if the Biden regime is trying desperately to hold its coalition together to antagonize Israel enough to placate those people, while at the same time not going so far as to lose the rest of their coalition.
And Robert, again, definitely there's an emboldening and there's more danger. In Canada, we see at this one of the shopping centers there, these pro-Hamas demonstrators. It's not exactly clear. Some say that they were threatening a police officer. Others were saying they were threatening somebody in front of the police. But one of the demonstrators was simply saying, "I'll put you 6 feet under," something like that. Police don't do a thing. We could imagine if those were maybe, let's say, pro-life demonstrators or anti-the potion demonstrators, something would probably be different in terms of how the police would handle it. Then there's another instance in terms of blocking traffic. In Canada, the police were actually bringing coffee to the pro-Hamas demonstrators. If I'm correct, you covered that at Jihad Watch. But we're in quite a time, definitely for decades, the powers that be in the world, they had this all planned out in terms of immigration and migrants, bringing thousands, tens of thousands, millions of Sharia followers onto Western territory. And now we see this horror of October 7th. And instead of the world being outraged at the perpetrators, there's just hundreds of thousands of these pro-Hamas demonstrators on our territory cheering this on. It's very frightening picture, isn't it? And one could sense that October 7th is also coming to our territory as well, right?
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. It's only a matter of time. The groundwork has all been laid, just as the groundwork was laid for years for what we're seeing now. I mean, you've had mass Muslim migration and massive Muslim communities now in the United States, such that they're able to elect 2 congresswomen and wield increasing political power in the United States. But it's not just the political power, it's also the establishment of these mobs, which are overwhelmingly made up of Muslims, no doubt almost all of them first and second generation in the United States. This is something that has been, in other words, a component of the opening of the floodgates and the massive migration that we've seen and continue to see into the United States. There's been no regard for trying to safeguard any kind of cultural cohesion, no regard for calling for assimilation. And then at the same time, with specifically the Muslim migrants, you have all the authorities, all without any exception, saying Islam is a religion of peace that has nothing whatsoever to do with terrorism. And, you know, if you're a police official or a congressman or a local official of some kind, and you say, well, there is a component to Islam that teaches violence, and it is noteworthy and should not be neglected that the jihad terrorists are working from Islamic teachings. And they will be the first ones to tell you that. If you were an official and said something like that, you would immediately have to apologize and resign in disgrace. And so the stage has been set. The non-Muslims are afraid to say anything remotely critical of Islam, and they are desperately afraid of charges of Islamophobia and racism and bigotry. And so the meanwhile, these young people, young Muslims, even if their parents have come here relieved to be away from Sharia states, relieved to be away from the misogyny and the anti-Semitism and all the rest of it in Islamic society, when they come here, their children are encouraged because of the diversity ethos and the multiculturalism madness. They are encouraged to recover their own culture and their own heritage instead of becoming American. And so the young people end up being more radical than the old. They end up taking up Islam. And look, people don't like to face this.
Yeah.
But I wrote a book a few years back, The History of Jihad, and you can look through it and show me. But there is not anything you could actually point to say that this is a place where Muslims and non-Muslims coexisted peacefully as equals without either group trying to gain hegemony over the other.
Right.
There's never been a place. Yeah. Everywhere there have been Muslims and non-Muslims, there's been violence, there's been strife, and there's been attempts to impose Sharia. Why do people in America think, oh, it's going to be different here? It's not going to happen here. It is going to happen here.
Absolutely. And Robert, you put yourself into the mind of, let's say, a police officer in the UK. You look at the UK and there's a demonstration and there's thousands, tens of thousands of these jihadis, pro-jihad demonstrators on the brink of violence, screaming, yelling. And you could just arrest Tommy Robinson. That's easier. Because if you touch one of these jihadis, I don't even think the police would be able to handle it anymore. There's a complete surrender, isn't there?
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. As a matter of fact, a couple months ago at Jihad Watch, I had it was, I believe, right after October 7th, if I recall correctly, I had a video of a couple of Englishmen, and they're wrapped in the English flag. I forget if it was the English flag or the British flag, but either way, it works. They've got the flag wrapped around them, and a couple of policemen come up and are telling them that they should take the flags off their shoulders because they could be offensive to the Muslim protesters. Yeah, this was after October 7th, because this is why they were telling them. There are all these pro-Hamas protesters there. And they said, well, the two guys said, the pro-Hamas protesters have all these Palestinian flags. Why aren't you telling them to put them away? And the policeman said, there are a lot more of them than there are of us. I think you could use that. That could be the epitaph of Britain right there. Yeah. That they let them in, and the British people are not reproducing. The Muslims are. And now we're seeing the tipping point where Britain is shading over and becoming a Muslim country. Eventually, it will be a Sharia state.
And guess what? Every single person that argued that Islam is a religion of peace in our society all of these years and decades, they are complicit in what has happened, because it's their argumentation and their excuses and all of that stuff that facilitated all of this to happen, right?
No doubt about it. And they're the ones who stigmatized, demonized, and smeared those who are calling attention to these things, so that we're rendered toxic. And yet everything we've said was right and is being proven true every day today.
Robert, everything is the way that the left does it, the way that the evil powers do it. Everything is on its head all the time. So even these arguments about Hamas, Israel, and everything is just so distorted. For me, it's very clear. All you have to do is look at what Hamas stands for, what Hamas says. For instance, that they're going to do and perpetrate another million October 7th till all eternity. They're very clear on this. And just in terms of what they perpetrated, in terms of what they did, we don't need to get into perhaps all the details here. People hopefully know and follow it, but the raping, the killing of the children, the burning of the children, the beheadings, what they're doing to the hostages today. It's not hard if you have any kind of moral clarity to know who's evil and not evil in this conflict. It's just so simple. But yet, these arguments. So just interested in a lot of these arguments that how many children the Israelis are killing in Gaza. So to begin with, our heart bleeds as Israel's heart bleeds for all people that die, including the children of Gaza. We know that the Israelis are this is the most moral army in the world in terms of fighting terrorism. The deaths that are caused, this is all inadvertent. It's not deliberate. And I'm also very interested in the numbers that the enemy creates. Also, what is considered a child in that culture, because as some experts have shown, they consider anybody under a certain age a child. So it's very interesting how they play with the numbers. They say that anybody under 18, they immediately say is a child. But a lot of other things that I've been thinking of here. If we use this kind of thinking in the Second World War, when we're trying to fight an evil entity, if we start counting numbers in terms of, oh, if one side starts, more people are dying on one side, then that means the other side has to stop. So if we were fighting against Hitler during the Second World War, and we're starting to count the numbers of how many innocent people on the German side are dying, would we have been able to defeat Hitler? Would we have even defeated Japan with the dropping of the nuclear bombs that ended that war? These arguments are very flawed coming from the Unholy Alliance, aren't they?
Yeah, but it's remarkable how people have not thought these things through. It seems as if the repetition of this theme has been very effective, and actually the repetition of it is an indication of how powerful it is. That you see all the time in CNN and the New York Times and so on, 50 Palestinians were killed and 3 Israelis or something like that.
Right.
And this is so the idea that the Israelis are in the wrong, whereas many more Germans were killed in World War II than Americans. And so that standard, Nazi Germany should have won World War II,
right,
or was in moral high ground for World War. Nobody ever takes into account the fact that Hamas is deliberately trying, and has for years, deliberately tried to increase the number of civilian casualties because it understands their value for propaganda purposes. It launches attacks from civilian areas precisely so as to draw retaliatory fire that it can use for that propaganda. And that the Israelis, as you noted, take great pains to avoid civilian casualties, but sometimes this is not possible to do. The 17-year-old kid with a Kalashnikov is killed, and he's classified as the Israelis killed a child, but also they just outright lie. And I wrote an article not long ago looking at the UN figures, and I was not the first to do this. It was an article actually about one of the reporters who had noticed this, but you can still see it, as far as I know, on the UN website, that they've got a daily tally of the number of Palestinians killed and the number of women and children. And this reporter went through and actually started to compare the numbers from day to day, and he saw all kinds of chicanery. Like, for example, on one day, from one day to the next, and I checked this myself, there were like 300 more casualties in the total number. But then if you looked at the number of children, it had jumped by 600. And so 300 people were killed, including 600 children. And that's the kind of thing that actually came out of the Hamas Gaza Ministry of Health and is repeated uncritically by the United Nations, with nobody either noticing or caring, that the numbers don't even make sense on the face of it.
Absolutely, Robert. And also just in terms of just the logic of looking at numbers, there's one side that is good and there's another side that is evil. And the side of good has to win in a war. And regrettably, a lot of people die in war. And it's incredible, too, that in this particular conflict, Hamas and the Islamic jihadists, they understand that Israel doesn't want to kill innocent people. And so Hamas puts civilians and children in the way to cause more deaths on their own side. It's really interesting that so many people can't see this, right?
Yeah, it's incredible to me. I've had people that I respected, people that I was friends with, who I hard for, after October 7th, show me a side that shocks me, and it shows me the power of the propaganda. This is one of the reasons why the propaganda keeps being pumped out. It is effective. The big works. The big lie is something that Goebbels spoke about, that we see the left using all the time nowadays, that you tell a lie, but you don't just tell a lie once, you have to keep on repeating it. And they repeat it so often that now I have people that I thought had sense, who they started talking to me after October 7th about the Israeli occupation when there is no occupation, and out the civilian casualties in the way that you were discussing before. And when I actually said, you know, in wartime, these kinds of things can be unavoidable, and look at the firebombing of Dresden, or look at the nuclear bombs in Japan. And this guy actually said, well, those things were terrible. That's exactly what I'm talking about. They shouldn't have been done. And they don't stop and think, you know, if there had not been the nuclear bombs in Japan, then there would have had to have been a ground invasion that would have killed many more people than the nuclear bombs did. And it's the same thing with Dresden, that if you don't do something like that, then you're going to have to go slower, and that's going to end up with more people killed. And so I asked this man, who had been a friend, what would you do? What would you do? He said, I would stop. If there are, I don't care if Hamas is using human shields. They're humans. They're civilians. You can't kill them. So if I was the Israelis, I would stop. And so I said, so you would allow Israeli civilians to be killed by Hamas, because Hamas is putting civilians in the way of getting killed itself. And that, then of course, that was the end of the discussion. But it seems as if people are just accepting this propaganda without thinking it through at all.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I studied Hiroshima and Nagasaki, the bombings, for many, many years. If those bombings did not occur or were not done, landed invasion would have had to happen. And conservative estimates are even 1 million, 2 million Japanese would have died, hundreds of thousands of American soldiers. And the Japanese were going to kill all the American POWs. It just, you can imagine the consequences there. But people like to blame a certain side for everything. Robert, want to talk about so much, but let me go to a break with our sponsors and we'll be right back.
Looks like you've been sleeping well.
Megan, he's back. The My Pillow guy.
And you're looking good.
Still feeling good.
Well, just when you thought it couldn't get any better, we've got the best pillow ever, My Pillow 2.0.
Wow, it's so soft and smooth.
It's cool to the touch. How did you do that?
Well, we took My Pillow's patented fill and combined it with this new technology that we didn't have back then when I invented My Pillow, to bring you the best pillow in history, My Pillow 2.0. Just like all of you, I never imagined that My Pillow could get any better. That's why I haven't changed it in nearly 20 years. Then I heard about a revolutionary new technology, and I knew I had to bring it to you all. My Pillow 2.0 is truly the next generation of My Pillow.
The My Pillow 2.0 is cooler and softer than the last My Pillow. It is so comfortable to sleep on at night. I look forward to going to bed, and I wake up well rested in the morning.
Sleep is all about temperature and height. MyPillow 2.0's patented adjustable fill is going to give you the exact individual support you need from your head to your bed. And now here's where it gets even better. We've all experienced those temperature-related sleep interruptions where you get too hot, you toss and turn, you flip your pillow over to the cool side. Well, all that's gone with my brand new MyPillow 2.0 cooling fabric that's made with temperature-regulating thread.
The best sleep just got even better. Whether you have a MyPillow or not, you need to get the brand new MyPillow 2.0. Call or go to MyPillow.com now. Use your promo code, and for a limited time when you buy one, you'll get a second one absolutely free.
You're sleeping even better.
And cooler, too.
And you're looking good.
Feeling good.
I knew you would.
Visit MyPillow.com.
And that's right. Make sure to go to mypillow.com or mystore.com and use promo code GG21. You can get a discount of up to 60% off on all the amazing products, and the Glazov Gang gets a credit. That's right. When you support the great Mike Lindell, you are also supporting the Glazov Gang. And if you like one-of-a-kind handmade art, make sure to go to lutfstudio.com and purchase resin art pieces made by our producer, the one and only Annie Cyrus. Use promo code Glazov to get a special discount, and you'll be empowering Annie in her fight for America and for freedom. And you'll also be empowering the Glazov Gang. Thank you so very much. And we are back with the great Robert Spencer. Robert, what do you think of my promotional talents?
Deeply impressed, Jamie, and I think you've got a big future in media because you know how to sell a product. And that is a key skill that people need in this new century in order to survive in an increasingly difficult environment.
Thank you, Robert. Well, it is getting more difficult for us, and we ask our viewers and our fans to help us out because we are a fan-generated program. Robert, let's get back to the tragic and sad, disturbing, scary circumstances of our time. We're talking about Hamas, Israel. Just another example here of it. Just everywhere we look is mind-boggling. So, Joy Behar, Whoopi Goldberg, Sonny Hostin, Rachel Maddow. Oh, we could go down a list. Oh, just they're for the Me Too movement, and all women should be believed. Oh, except the victims of leftists. But, this radical feminism and believe all women. But how come they don't want to believe the Israeli women being hostages under Hamas right now and what's happening to them? I'm very curious in terms of these leftist feminists in our culture and their complete silence in terms of what's happening, the horrifying nightmare of what's happening to the Israeli women and girls being held hostage right now by Hamas. And by the way, even more horrifyingly, it's not just the women and girls, because the evidence is revealed that the men and boys are being raped and sexually assaulted as well. This is pure demonic Satanism, which Hamas is. But what do you think about this believe all women except Jewish women charade?
Well, Jamie, I think that the people you named, Joy Behar and Whoopi Goldberg and all the rest of the View hosts and people of that ilk, they don't think. What they're doing is tribal.
Right.
Just tribalistic. You're either on their side or you're not. And if you're not, you don't have a point. You're not even worth discussing. You're not worthy of engaging at all. Mm-hmm. And they see the world in very simplistic terms. These are not thinking people. And so they see things basically in black and white, good or bad paradigms. And so when it comes to Israel and the Palestinians, Israel, white oppressors. Palestinians, brown victims. Really, they've divided the world pretty much all over the world. Every conflict has white oppressors and brown victims. And so the Israeli women who were raped and brutalized, they're white oppressors. They do not have a paradigm to understand that Israelis could be victims. It does not work. The tribal leaders have given them the order that the Israelis are oppressors. And so that's how they see the world. That's how they see the conflict. And in every conflict, they've been told, this is the magic key, the magic decoder ring that helps you understand it. White people are bad, they're oppressors. Brown people are noble victims. And so it works in pretty much every situation. Where it doesn't work, you just ignore it. In Nigeria, where Muslims are killing Christians at genocidal levels, both people involved are brown, as we would say, or as they would say, and the Muslims are the oppressors and the Christians are the victims, so it just doesn't get reported. You have a few sites that are dedicated to the persecution of Christians, or that cover it, like Jihad Watch when it involves jihad, but otherwise, you're not going to see that in the New York Times or the Washington Post or CNN, because they also, like the View hosts, see the world as, oh, white oppressors, brown victims. This doesn't fit. It doesn't even exist. They didn't see it.
Absolutely, Robert. Very, very profound, very true. Thank you for your wisdom. And of course, we would add a couple other footnotes to that, as you're also, of course, well aware. The chances of something happening violently to you is increasing. When I say you, of course, that actually makes sense to you and to me and to all of us freedom fighters. This is increasing. But when I say to you, I also mean these people know too. They have their tribal, way of thinking, and they have their allegiances, and they're leftists. But they also know that something could happen to their career and all that stuff, and getting blacklisted and getting marginalized. But it's increasing. The chances of getting hurt in terms of October 7th, Hamas, and everything happening here. We see what's happening to Jewish students on campuses and to Jewish people in our society, and what's going to start happening also to Christians and all people that are not part of the Sharia system. But I think these people are very well aware, and they're also afraid because the chances of something happening in terms of violence is increasing here, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. And so the left, the people on the left know they have to toe the line, even if having doubts, even if they might be appalled by October 7th. If they don't toe the line, then they're going to be in the out group, and the out group not only loses their job, gets vilified, but also increasingly is vulnerable to the possibility of physical violence. And certainly the other people, the people who are on the outs in the society today, are increasingly vulnerable, and that's only going to get worse, I'm afraid.
Yeah, and we know these utopian revolutions eat their children, and we know, excuse me, what happened to the liberals in Bolshevik Russia who supported the Bolshevik Revolution. We know that they were the first victims in the firing line of the Bolsheviks, and then of course the Stalinists killed the Bolsheviks, and the killing machine takes on a life of its own. And for me, just to watch this, I know so many leftists that demonized me and called me names and slandered me all my life. And I know a lot of these people personally, some of them in university now, just terrified. They've misgendered somebody. The left comes for them, and they end up being on the list. It's only a matter of time. And even some leftist Jews that I know that demonized people like you and me for years, and now they're terrified on campus. They thought that if they just, posture as pro-Palestinian, and they're not like those bad Jews over there. We're the open-minded Jews. We're against what Israel does, and let us give you a hug. And we just think if we give you more money and more land, you're going to love us. And I know quite a few of these leftist Jews now. They're actually terrified in terms of being identified as being Jewish by the religion of peace that they say that it is. They live in a very strange world, don't they? A lot of these people, there will be somebody with with a sword just about to chop their head off, reading the Quran and reading about how important it is to chop the head off of the unbeliever. And the person that's about to get killed, that leftist, will still be saying Islam is a religion of peace. This Stockholm syndrome goes very suicidally deeply, doesn't it?
Yeah, no doubt about it. Well, look at Britain. In Britain, there were thousands of girls raped on an industrial scale and for prostitution by these Muslim rape gangs. And even to this day, nobody dares say what I just said, Muslim rape gangs, even though they were very clearly operating according to the Quranic principles about taking so-called captives of the right hand, taking infidel women and using them as sex slaves. And so that's in the Quran. I can give you the verses so you can check me up. Chapter 4, verse 3, 424. That is chapter 4, verses 3 and 24. Chapter 23, verses 1 to 6. Chapter 33, verse 50. And chapter 70, verse 30. And they all make it clear that you can take infidel women and you can use them in this way. And so these gangs of men were doing this in Britain. They went on for years, and it's still going on. And the authorities did nothing because they were afraid of being called racist and Islamophobic. A politician a few years back was vilified and lost her job because she dared to say they were mostly Pakistani. Nobody except Tommy Robinson dares say that they're all Muslims and operate Islamic principles. And so this is still going on, and it appears that Britain is willing to sacrifice a whole generation of its young women on the of not being accused of racism.
There's a booklet/book written on this called Easy Meat, and it's just horrifying what's happened in the UK. And some of the estimates have it that in the last 15-20 years that 1 million girls in the UK have been one way or another affected by sexual assault at the hands of this sexual jihad. But you've got to believe all women except the victims of Muslim rape gangs and what they're motivated by. I want to talk a little bit about Trump, but we cannot exit the issue and topic of Islam and everything that's happening without getting a word from our wonderful superwoman, Annie Cyrus.
Well, thank you, Jamie. And it's always very hard to say anything, add anything, when you have the one and only Robert Spencer, because who knows better than Robert? But I do want to ask a question, Robert, related to Islam, related to almost everything you talked about, but a little outside of that. October 7th until today, the normal narrative goes on, of course. Israel is the bad guy, and now they're even facing international crime court for genocide. But here's a question. Why is it nobody has even mentioned or thought about the fact that who was behind it all and who's still behind it? I'm referring to IRGC, an Islamic regime of Iran, funding it, planning it, going as far as getting Hezbollah and Houthis involved to continue this ring of fire around Israel. Why is Iran getting away with it?
Iran's getting away with it because the Biden regime loves Iran. The Biden regime is desperate to have some accord with Iran. Now, why is that? It is astonishing to me that it would persist. It started, of course, during the Obama administration when there was an effort to try to make Iran be the rock of stability in the region after the fall of Saddam Hussein's Iraq and the civil war in Syria. And it was thought that Iran could bring more bring peace to the whole area. And the U.S. under Obama signed on to this idea, as crazy as it was for so many reasons. One notably being, of course, that Iran is Shiite and most of the Middle East is Sunni. But even aside from that, Iran has so many competitors, the Saudis, the Egyptians, the Turks, who also want to be the leaders of the Islamic world, that it was never really going to work. But it was this pet idea of the Obama administration. Then Trump repudiated the disastrous deal that Obama signed, and it seemed as if the Biden regime was desperate to repudiate Trump, to show Trump wrong by reviving the deal with Iran. And now this whole thing has gotten out of hand because the Iranians, of course, first they faced the massive nationwide protests that they ruthlessly put down. But that made it impossible in terms of optics for the Biden regime to conclude a deal with the Iranian regime, while the Iranian regime was essentially at war with its own people. And then came this, which actually started in order to forestall a Saudi-Israeli rapprochement. But this is very dangerous because the Biden regime already hated Israel, and it hates Israel now. They're leftists, and the left hates Israel. The left wants an internationalist single state. Israel is a nationalist, ethnic, religious state. I mean, it's not a religious state like Sharia states, but you understand I'm talking about the Jewish identity. It's a Jewish state. And so that contradicts the left's internationalist collectivism. And so the left wants to crush Israel. The Biden regime, as a leftist regime, wants to crush Israel. But it's stuck with this fact that most Americans still support Israel. We officially are allied with Israel, so they can't disengage that easily. Certainly don't want to put any pressure on the Islamic Republic of Iran, which they love far more than they love Israel. And so they have to try to play this very strange double game that we saw with Biden going over to see Netanyahu, pledging his undying support, and then saying, oh, and I'm giving $100 million to Gaza, which means to Hamas, despite their denials, because there's nobody else in Gaza who can get the money. And in Iran, then he gives $10 billion to Iran, which is really criminal in light of the fact that Iran bankrolls Hamas. But in doing that, he's showing his true allegiances, but he's also trying to placate his base, and the base that was storming the White House the other day. And so he's trying to show them, see, really, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, I'm on your side. I'm giving $10 billion to the financiers of Hamas. In other words, the United States is bankrolling the war against Israel right now. But that's why nobody wants to talk about Iran's role in all this, because the Biden regime doesn't want that coming out. It would make it harder for them to help Iran.
Absolutely. And that is why you are the one who knows best. Thank you, Robert. Ladies and gentlemen, here's your host, Dr. Jamie Glazov.
Thank you, Annie. Robert, before you go, very quickly, because we're out of time, but I love Trump. I pray that Trump wins. I think if Trump doesn't get in, I think so much of this is irreversible now, and the left is just destroying this country. But Trump's doing great, Iowa, etc. But as I look, how is these globalist elitist mobsters, how are they going to even allow this to happen? All this ballot harvesting and all these mail-in ballots like they did last time. I don't see how that could be stopped. Again, Trump last time, I had 700,000 in a certain place. All of a sudden they stopped counting, and then all of a sudden, 1 million more votes come in, and 99.99% are for Biden. I mean, come on. And but now we're hearing some stuff in the news, and just with sources that we're finding out that even if Trump wins, we're hearing some noises that the powers that be are planning to not allow it? What are you hearing on these levels, and what do you think of all this?
Yeah, Jamie, I certainly hope this isn't true, but I think it's just common sense.
Mm.
After all, they framed him for Russian collusion that he did not commit. They impeached him twice. They accused him of leading an insurrection, which he did not do, which they're barring him from ballots now, even though he's never been convicted. They have saddled him with felony charges that are each one more ridiculous than the last. And it's all designed to keep him from becoming president again.
Yeah.
Somebody that they hate this much, and somebody that they fear this much, and somebody that they've thrown so much at already, and he's still standing. I can't see how they're going to let him waltz into the White House again.
Yeah.
On 2025. I don't see it. I think that they'll kill him, or if they don't kill him, they will have him in prison. And there are people saying, "Oh, he could be president from in prison." I don't know that that's really practical, or that will happen. If they don't do that, then they will hamstring him in every way with legislative initiatives that take away presidential power here or presidential power there, or make him subject to various checks or limitations that other presidents haven't had to put up with. They'll be working to undermine him at every turn, of course, lying and creating crises like they did last time. So, yeah, we're in for some difficult situations, certainly. I always have hope. I think that while we live, there's hope, and things can change in unexpected ways, but we have to be realistic about the situation we're in.
Well, the powers that be, in terms of the globalists and the left and the system that they want to create, the worldwide Maoist cultural revolution that they want to usher in, Trump's in the way. Whereas people like Biden and Kamala Harris, every time I say her name, I just keep picturing her cackling and laughing and talking to those kids about space. It's just haunting. But Trump is in the way, and Biden and Kamala are not in the way. They are helping this being put into place. Robert, we got to go. There might be a few people left watching that might not know where to follow you. Let's tell them or remind them.
Yeah, I'm at jihadwatch.org. That is still the only news site for jihad activity in the United States and around the world, updated many times daily, jihadwatch.org. And also Jihad Watch RS on Twitter or X, deeply shadow banned, but you can still find me. And people say they don't see that I post, but I post there many times a day as well. So complain to Elon Musk and his claims that he protects the freedom of speech. We've shut down on Facebook, or they shut us down. They're fascists. But you can also find my books for the time being at Amazon, at Barnes & Noble, and wherever good books are sold.
Robert, how do you yourself know that something weird's still happening at Twitter X?
Oh, I know because I have, 247,000 followers. And if you look at the kind of engagement that the tweets get, the news tweets, I'm not talking about if I'm talking to somebody or something like that.
Yeah.
The news stories linked to the full story at Jihad Watch. And they go up and they get a certain amount of engagement. And then if you look at someone, just any random person, take 5 random people who have 24,000 followers, that is 1/10 of what I have, and they have far more engagement for tweets about news items, or even just if they are chatting with somebody. And so you've got to think, it seems to me quite obvious that the reach of these tweets is being people who say they follow me, even when I have addressed tweets to them with their @ address in there, they don't see it. And so I don't know what's going on. Well, actually, I do know what's going on. It's censorship of dissident voices, but it's contrary to what Elon Musk has said he's trying to do there.
My family escaped the Soviet Union, and the Soviet Union has come to us. Robert Spencer, thank you for being a brave truth teller and freedom fighter in our world today. Thank you.
You too, Jamie. All of that. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And viewers of the Glazov Gang, please support Robert Spencer. Check out his work. Visit him at jihadwatch.org. Please subscribe to our Rumble channel and press instant notifications. We'll see you soon. Good night.